So welcome everyone. Thank you to be there with us today in this event talking about misinformation. I think misinformation is a big topic in this COP. We heard a lot from the President Lula talking about the cup of truth. Maybe we will have one finally, and launching a new declaration about information integrity. So I think it's a hot moment for journalists, communicators, all kind of narrative people. So I'm delighted to be here today with Guadalupe, I'm so sorry, Guadalupe Sanchez Granel, coming from Latin Clima. You're doing a lot in Americas, Latin America especially, about narratives and how to build a powerful message around climate action. So Guadalupe, it's a pleasure to have you.
A pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Guadalupe. Fermin Coupe. Fermin, you're the Latin American editor at the Health Journalist Network and Dialogue Health. So you bring a lot of insights on how media can share powerful narratives and how can share complex information into more accessible ones. So thank you, Fermin, for being there.
Thank you.
And last but not least, Clara Tomé, you're a European Climate Pact ambassador. You're doing a lot in Spain to share narratives through social medias and to really mobilize to action. So, Clara, thank you.
Thank you so much, a pleasure.
And I think today the big message will be how can we make this climate truth not only accessible but also more on point of the engagement. No, not only we need scientific-based information, but we need an information that can move us to action. So I'm really excited to be hearing more from the experts on that topic. So I just wanted to start with a bit of a round to share some impression and to share some experience, because I think what we need is real talk on experience and on based concrete examples. So I will go in order, and I will start with you, Guadalupe. If you can share your biggest communication or transparency challenge in your daily work. What kind of challenge are you living as a periodist, as a journalist? And a recent example of misinformation, of lack of transparency that you've encountered, and what kind of action did you take to pass this challenge?
Well, I think examples, there's many. We have even one example here at COP. It was said that Greta Thunberg was here in Belém, and she's not. And the news travels super fast everywhere. And that's part of the everyday challenge for journalists, because this was published by news media. So, and that's why a lot of people believed it was true. So even as journalists, we have to double check all the time what we are publishing, who are we listening, what are we believing. I think one of our greatest challenges right now is AI. I'm a journalist, but I work especially with social media and digital, and that's the thing, recognizing if what the video you're seeing, if the picture you're seeing is real, and double checking that takes time. Unfortunately, fake news travels faster than the truth. And we've seen that a lot. We've seen it in Spain, in the Llana. I live in Madrid, so I followed everything that happened, and this information was overwhelming around lots of topics. So I think that in our daily work as journalists, the challenge now is to really double check, have the confirmation of the sources that who we talk with, but also double check images, double check videos. That's what I'm found it more challenging. And I think we also as journalists, journalism at the end of the day is a service, right? Because we want information integrity too. So I think that we need to educate our audiences also. We need to talk more about fake news and of how it happens, how even psychologically we need to share the knowledge that we are getting, because uh, people just believe in fake news or misinformation because it confirms what they already think about something. So how do you break that? I don't have the answer. I think we are all building it together, but I think it's one of our biggest challenge right now.
Thank you, Guadalupe. I think it's hard because you want to have the prime information, you want to be the first one sharing it, because it's always more valuable, it's always a personal and a professional recognition, but at the same time, as you said, fake news travel faster than the truth, so thank you for sharing. Going with you, Fermin, with the same question, some examples, some challenges.
Yeah, definitely. So following up on what Guadalupe was saying, I think one of the main things that we got as reporters now is that the stories that we do move slower compared to the everything that we see in social media and everything regarding so low quality information, misleading information that moves much faster than any stories that we can do because it takes time. We need to check with sources, we need to read documents, and if you do want to do an actual fact-based, well-researched story, it might take a little bit extra time. And as we heard with the example from Guadalupe, with people starting here, that Greta was here, media published it even without checking, because we are all rushing and we need to get the stories out, but we also need time to actually work on an actual story. So that's, I think, one of the biggest challenges that we got. Another, I think, particularly related to the UN climate summits, it's the entire UNFCCC process. It's quite complex, quite technical to grasp for audiences. As we know, it's packed with acronyms, many technical language, lots of political nuance, and that complexity of the process itself can also create a space for misinformation too. So there's also something else just to share. We can also find what we can call, I guess, asymmetric transparency in a way that some governments will be communicating things clearly with their press releases, their statements, but other governments will be releasing partial data, biased press releases, will delay press communiques, or go particularly deep into technical details to actually avoid explaining things better, and that can also lead to more misinformation too. And just to name an example that I think is quite relevant to what we're seeing on the last couple of days at COP, and even before, every government is working on their NDCs. They are filing it or have already filed or will file in the future. And in many cases, we do see, and I can think of a few countries in which this happened, that they release the NDC, and it's so technical sometimes for reporters to grasp, and we can find lots of mistakes on the way the NDCs are reported, saying that they are less ambitious, more ambitious, and that can also boost misinformation too. And I think the key there is to actually do what we do as reporters, actually take the time to read the NDC, analyze it, read the fine print, compare documents, speak with the experts. But again, that takes time and that clashes with the whole misinformation.
Thank you, Fermin. It's true that nowadays, journalists, you have to become experts. You have to become experts on everything, every topic. Usually, an expert on climate action is following one topic, like mitigation or NDC or just the GST. I'm talking technical terms right now, so sorry about that. But you, as journalists, you have to cover everything from COP or from any climate summit, so yeah, hard one. Clara, can you maybe share some examples and other challenges, as I know that you're not working as a journalist but more as a communicator?
Yeah, I think, I mean, the issues are pretty similar despite being different works. I do agree with Fermin that climate science is very complex, very nuanced. And of course, people do not connect with that as easy as they connect with, like misinformation, because misinformation is designed somehow to be simple, to touch the emotions, and it's very easy shareable. Also, social media platforms, that's the thing, amplify this issue, amplify this problem, because algorithms per se reward more this dynamism, the outrage, the certainty, and not accuracy always. And I think this makes it very difficult for credible climate communicators, to maintain trust and clarity, especially when people nowadays is overwhelmed with so much information that is circulating in Instagram, in Twitter, in TikTok, where people that are not experts are just giving their opinion on everything. And that's the thing. Most of the audience just listen to something and they believe it or they share it. So they start amplifying the message without making a little bit of research of who is this person. Is he an expert on the field, or is it just a content creator famous for their conspiracies, right? I think as you said, one of the biggest examples that we saw this nationally in Spain, it was with the Dana in Valencia, and I think it was a huge opportunity for everybody, for awareness, for public understanding that the climate crisis is not happening just in the global south. It also touches home so many times. And it was a bit disappointing to see that the public narrative was a big part of, not all, but a big part of the public narrative was diluted in these theories and conspiracies about why the Dana happened, right? And I think as climate communicators as well, we need to be careful with the language that we use, because of course, if we try to simplify the message, we can just also commit the same issue. We can also make this information if we just say, okay, the Dana happened because of climate change. No, be careful there. Dana and other climate disasters, they are amplified, their intensity, their frequency by the climate crisis. But you cannot just simplify the message, and you need to be nuanced. And that is when you lose a little bit the interest of the audience, right? So, we saw this in the Dana, as I was saying, because there was all these videos and conspiracies around dams that have been removed, so it prevented proper drainage, and the floods were worse. And at least there was 5 videos apparently talking about the dams that together reach out more than 5 million views, which is a lot, And the same with other, theories about that the storm was artificially engineered, that some type of climate manipulation and things like this. And people want to be different. We live on an era right now that people prefer to, just to feel a little bit different. They want to go with not with the 90% of the scientific community being agree on that the climate crisis exists, but on the opposite, So they are not inside the same bubble. And I think we really need to be very careful with this. As you said, it's about double check, the sources and all of that. Also as consumers, not just as journalists, but as consumers, it requires time. Not everybody has the time to, when they see a TikTok, when they see a video on Instagram, to check all these little things that require some minutes. But it is very important as a consumer to understand what are you saying, what are you seeing, what are you sharing, because it can be very damaging. And I think we don't see the danger on sharing a video so many times that has not been verified. I think climate disinformation is not an opinion. It is really a harm. It can really harm. And the same with climate denial. And until we don't understand this, it seems just a click, but it's a click that really can make a lot of harm. So yeah.
Thank you, Clara, for recording us important, not only as a creators, but also as users. I'm not a creator myself, but I use a lot social media, and it's true that when I see the verified check, at the bottom of tweets or posts or anything, it's true that I feel more secured. And yeah, definitely got your opinion on that. But now I'm going away from examples on challenges to turn around on solutions. I know, Guadalupe, that at the beginning of the event you said that you didn't have a lot of solutions or to propose or to offer, but I will try again with a new question around the United Nations processes and how can you make it more understandable and more attractive, no more easy to connect without oversimplifying the message, as Clara was saying before.
Well, that's, I think, one of the biggest challenges. I started going to COPs. My first COP was in Dubai, and that was my whole goal from coming there was how to simplify the message for social media, but being careful, as Clara said, of not oversimplifying and contributing to misinformation. I find the fact that we have done, we have tried. Sometimes I also think we can test, and we have done that a lot, testing what can work, what doesn't work. Making a conversation around negotiations attractive is very hard, because at the end of the day, here they are discussing words, commas, points, and literally like what verbs, if they use any verbs. So how can you make that attractive? Well, for example, one social media piece we have done that has had a very good engagement was a glossary. We did the explaining of words that are used here, but like explained for your 20-year-old sister or to your 60-year-old mom, like that anybody can understand. The acronyms, the words. So we do this each year. Now we are doing it this week. Like which words are going around? Adaptation, what does that mean? Like there's a lot of, so I think doing a service of explaining words in a very, very simple language that are used here is one kind of solution, or at least, yes, one way we found to connect with audiences and in a way that they can understand. Then we do lots of videos here with experts, but we ask experts to be like, please explain this as if you were explaining this to your uncle in Christmas dinner, please. Like, and it works. Of course, we get like very high-profile people that have to do this exercise, but they do it. And then we have done even things, funny things. Last year in Colombia, I went to the Biodiversity COP, and we decided to explain negotiations as a Colombian telenovela. So, Ugly Betty, Betty la Fea, a very known Colombian telenovela, but also internationally. So of course, we oversimplified there more in a funny way. It was more of a humor piece, but it was also informative. Like, okay, here are the North countries wanting this, and the Global South countries wanting that, and this is how like this telenovela goes inside a COP, because at the end of the day, it is a little bit of yes, everybody here comes with an interest, and each country defends their own. So yes, these are some examples that we have found to simplify COP, to connect with audiences, and I think also it's very important, and with this I finish, to engage more with influencers, news creators. Sometimes we, as journalists, have to understand where our audiences are. And many reports show people are reading less and are more in TikTok. And people from all ages, not just teenagers. So if our audiences are in those platforms, we need to speak like people speak in those platforms. So making collaborations, or as important as writing your article or doing your TV report, but we have to realize information has been going through other channels for a long time now. Not traditional media. It's just one way, but it's not even the most viewed or read. So there we also have a challenge, because I think sometimes as journalists, we think that is a little bit, I don't know, like I don't know, below us or whatever, and no. We need to collaborate with them, to even help them if they need, maybe with our data. But if we want our message to get there, we need to open our minds also to that.
Thank you, Guadalupe. I'm kind of curious right now about the Ugly Betty telenovela thing. We try to shake it up. So yeah, you just gave me a new video to watch. Fermin, going with you right now. So you already talked about the importance of checking data, reading, checking with experts, but I was a bit more curious and wanting to ask you more about what kind of data do you use, what kind of sources, because there are so many, even of just these NDC, so these national climate plans that are the big focus of this COP this year. There are so many platforms analyzing NDC, so how can you manage this ocean of information?
Yeah, so taking one step back first, I think something to bear in mind is that if I see myself 15 years back when I started reporting on the environment, there's definitely a learning curve to it. While we see reporters specialize in sports, in culture, in politics, economics, environment is another beat that's scaling up. And also in environment, we have another beat, which is climate. And it takes time, skills to actually get to it. That's why in my case, while I have a training in media, I decided to get a training in environment, more theoretical, not media itself. That really helped. I mean, I'm not saying every reporter needs to do that, but it definitely takes time getting used to all the jargon, all the technicalities. You gotta be willing to learn that. So when you find yourselves at COP, you're gonna see that there's a whole bunch of resources ready available to you. I probably am getting like 100 emails per day with press releases from organizations, and amongst all of that, there's gonna be 10% that might be handy. So there's a combination of resources. So you gotta go to the official places, which is all the documents that are being published by the UNFCCC. So these are all the draft texts, the actual NDCs as well, the technical synthesis reports, the global stock take, all that's gotta be on your reporting. That's really, really important. And it can be difficult, it can be quite technical documents to read. They are, I was just checking the NDC from Mexico that was just published. It's over 100 pages long, and it's quite technical. So you gotta know what you're reading as well, because if not, you gotta get swamped into technicalities, and you have no idea if it's more ambitious, less ambitious. But that's definitely one place to go. Then you can help yourself by going into independent data platforms, like some of the one you were mentioning, from Global Carbon Project, Climate Action Tracker, the New Climate Institute. If you're looking into energy, you can go to International Energy Agency or IRENA or the World Resources Institute, Climate Watch. They all got their own beats. Some of them look at climate broadly, some of them look at energy, some of them look at forests, such as Global Forest Watch. But they are really, really handy to do the stories. Looking at and engaging with scientists as well is very handy. Any kind of assessments by the IPCC. All the reports that are presented here at COP are quite newsy, like the global carbon budget, all the energy reports. There was a couple that were presented in the last few days. They are quite engaging as well. And speaking with people, I mean, from harassing delegates on the hallways to speaking with NGOs, speaking with experts, indigenous communities, civil society, academics. There's a whole bunch of academics at COP as well. And also, fortunately enough, after 3 years of hosting COPs in countries that couldn't do protests and and hosting civil society. We are in a country in which the COP comes from the streets to the venue, and that's fantastic, and that's why we see a lot of indigenous groups and civil society featuring quite well and very broadly in the articles, and that's very, very important as well. I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Fermin. By all the work that you've described, I'm guessing that you're not sleeping a lot. So take care, Fermin. Clara, I want you to share a bit more about practical tips to make engaging content about the UNFCCC and well, all the scientific world that's going on out there. So Guadalupe already shared one, but I'm sure you have plenty of more.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think I would say creativity, dynamism, but more important, authenticity. Because for so long I was trying, to be diplomatic and professional, trying to deliver all this data, all these scientists, policy or legal issues, just because the topics are serious. And I felt the pressure that I was needing to match that seriousness with a professional tone or with a technical way of speaking. But I eventually realized that what actually resonates with the audience that is not in the climate space, is humanity, not formality. And since I started to be more myself, to use my personality, which is a lot of like sarcasm, humor sometimes, I saw a huge engagement on my videos. Like I saw really different, outreach from the videos that I was doing. And, I just depend on the topic. I am just myself. Sometimes I have a lot of rage. Sometimes I have a lot of hope. And sometimes I just want to make it a little bit more fun. I was like talking in one video that got really good engagement related to the fact that we didn't get that the plastic ocean treaty, and I made it fun. I made it very informal, very fun, and that's why it reached people out of the climate space. And then I got kind of like the trick. Okay, this is the way I need to keep doing the videos right now, because before I was doing it more technical. But I think then in terms of edits, content creation, I find inspiration in other creators, other type of videos that are not necessarily on the climate and environmental space. So I will see on social media what is working, what type of transition, music, and you try to bring it to the space. So I think that is very important. But mainly, I would say that I apply to the audience what it works for me. And for me, when we talk about 1.5 degrees, it doesn't touch my heart. Even I know the urgency of that number. When we talk about 1.2 billion people being displaced because of climate disasters in 2050, it doesn't touch my heart either. Although I comprehend the urgency as well, because they are just numbers, and numbers don't touch the heart of many people. It is very hard to connect with numbers, with statistics, with technicalities. So for me, storytelling and real stories of the people in the ground, that is what works. It's what really touches my heart, and makes me care about it. Is an elder from Paiporta, after the Dana, that where his house has been, completely destroyed and swept off, and he has nothing else after this. It's a Maori from the Borari indigenous community here from Para, trying to extinguish the fires that are devouring his ancestral forest, watching the animals die in front of his eyes. It's my brothers and sisters in the Philippines, with these continuous typhoons, hitting their homes. It's each of the 67 lives that were lost after the Melissa hurricane. It's the kids in Tuvalu, in Kiribati, seeing how every day, the sea rise levels keep it increasing, and they don't know when they really their territory is gonna be drowned. Or is even a farmer in India, I will never forget this story, that took his life because he was not able to grow food to provide to his family because of the drought. Those are the stories, that make people feel something. So I think it's very essential that when we talk about the climate crisis, we focus on real examples. Because until you don't put a face into the issue, and until you don't put a story, you cannot really connect and care about it. And I think that is why the climate crisis is pretty hard, to connect with for so many people, because it seems so far away. And then you hear, like this first week, I was just hearing testimonies, not just about climate disasters, but about cases of environmental injustice, especially from indigenous peers. And I was devastated. Like, I couldn't contain my tears. So I want to believe that there is humanity out there, and when you hear these things, they really touch your heart. So I think that is the key, and that is why also these days, refine a little bit my mission, that I really want to continue bringing these stories up front, trying to talk about these stories with visuals, with the testimonies, but I think that is the key, and not just the important data that just some of us understand.
Thank you, Clara. Thank you for bringing some humanity here, and not just working about information, but talking about people in the end. So yeah, thank you so much. And I'm going directly to you, Fermin, talking about these narratives and how can we avoid doom narratives that will paralyze action, but talking about stories, talking about people, and trying to go through these action steps that is what we want, no? Not just as journalists, but also as a bit of activists, because the line between journalism and activism in climate is going thinner and thinner. So, yeah, if you can.
Yeah, so you're very right. So I think as a background, I'm going to go back to something that Guadalupe mentioned. We are on a context in which people are reading less, and at the same time, we are all overwhelmed by lots of information from everywhere, not just news, but whenever we grab our phone, we are flooded with notifications from all the apps and all the news apps, from Instagram to X to Facebook. So we are really flooded on information, and it's a really challenging time for reporters, but at the same time, one of the reasons why people are disengaged with news is the narratives that we are using, especially with climate. We do see lots of news, and this is backed by many reports that have been done, that we only report on the catastrophes. There's really not, we are always thinking of a balance between mitigation and adaptation. We need to think of the same balance in news in terms of the stories that tell positive things that are going on the ground, that we know that many things are actually happening from communities, local governments, and so on, but we are not telling those stories. And there's a lack of balance in terms of that. And whenever people read frequently those catastrophistic doom kind of headlines, they disengage with news because they feel frustrated, and it's understandable. So I guess the first thing is actually thinking on, so okay, what kind of solutions are we working on? Using this framework that has been mentioned for many years now of solution journalism, trying to find those stories on the ground, trying to find that progress that's happening, trying to see if those interventions that are being done, if they are bending their curve, if they are working or not, never losing that critical angle that we have as reporters, but being able to report on that is really, really good as well. And thinking of, as well with climate as something that's kind of a systemic problem as well can help, not just thinking on individuals. We know that sometimes corporations want to change the narrative and think that individuals are the ones that all of us have to take action on our daily lives to actually address the climate crisis, but we know if we look at the emission curve, the real difference comes from the actions of governments, private corporations, and so on. So always being careful on the lens that we use in terms of that, and acknowledging as well the losses and the limits regarding climate, particularly for vulnerable regions, and at the same time showing success stories of adaptation, and being careful on how we address uncertainty, because we are telling a story that in many cases has uncertainties, because we don't necessarily know always the trajectory that we are heading. Can be 1.5, can be 2, can be 2.5, and so being careful with that, because if you are telling an audience that the city that they live in, the region that they live in, is going to be flooded. We gotta be careful on if that's 1.5, if that's 2, if that's 2.5, because that's real life impacts that might be changed because of the way we are telling the story. And also thinking on centering the stories on a word that comes across deeply at COPs, which is climate justice. Thinking of how do we engage with communities on the ground whenever we are reporting a story, with them being respectful on the way we tell their stories. It's them that are telling their stories, it's not us, giving them a platform, giving them a voice as well. Yeah, but I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Fermin. I think you talk about uncertainties, and it resonates with what we were talking earlier about misinformation and how can we tell a story, an engaging one, without simplifying, without engaging with disinformation. So, Guadalupe, what kind of trends right now do you see with misinformation, and do you see a difference between what's going on regarding misinformation in Latin America and what's going on in Europe as you are working in both regions?
I don't know if there's a difference. There are studies, though, that show that a lot of Spanish-speaking disinformation comes from Europe to Latin America. That's interesting. But right now, I think we're a little bit even. It's very worrying because it really is I think right now it's one of the biggest obstacles to climate action. It really stops people from believing that there is, first, understanding that there's a problem, and also understanding that they can be part of the solution. I think what Fermin says also is important. The fact that we sometimes in the climate movement, our stories are super negative, and everything is a no. We shouldn't have this, we shouldn't have that, we shouldn't, and what is a yes? And that yes is complex, and we have to build it together. But I think right now, because climate is not even the only issue we are all having in the world, there's also a gap to reimagine the future together and being able to build it. I think there's a protest or something. There's a noise.
I think there's people chanting. Maybe they're trying to engage with climate action differently.
Probably. Something I think was very important was the march on Saturday, the Global Climate March. I don't know if you were there, but it was very, very powerful. And that is also a statement that there's people that care for this, that there's people that are really fighting in the ground. There was lots of indigenous communities. They are here, they come, they protest, they share, and I think that's wonderful. And I think in a way, showing real stories, even that are happening here, is a way to tackle disinformation. Showing positive stories is also a way to tackle disinformation. And also, it's very important, I believe, that it would help because there's also things that we can't control around disinformation. And this has to do with our platforms. These platforms that we use, that we love, have algorithms that promote fake news a lot. That there's plenty studies that show this, and the declaration made at the beginning of this COP on information integrity had that in mind also. And I hope every country that is for that declaration pushes for information integrity to be in the cover decision. I think it's important, it will be historic, and it will also be an important statement.
Wow, people are just cheering for you. Thank you for your statements, Guadalupe. I think for now there are 12 countries part of the declaration on information integrity, so we hope some more countries will join before the end of the COP. And just to conclude, Clara, on this part on misinformation, what kind of strategy works on climate media? Because as Guadalupe said, um, you have algorithm working for climate misinformation and climate fake news. So what can we do to go against? Uh,
Well, I think the very basics is understanding that there is a whole agenda, right, behind this climate denialism and misinformation. I think that's pretty interesting. Like when you see the amount of money that companies and fossil fuel companies are putting into, paying certain people, paying even like Nobel prizes to say certain things, you are just mind blown. So I think it's very important to understand that, because then you can see that there is an agenda, and that this is prepared, so that's the very basic, understanding that. Then I think, it's very interesting to follow, or us as creators as well, try to debunk the claim and explain the logic behind the videos. There are more people that I see around my community, like trying to get these videos that get very like engagement and very like a lot of views, and they try to debunk them under like checking for the real sources. Like there was, for example, I remember I saw a video debunking this myth that started at the very beginning of the year, actually related to COP. That at the beginning I even believed about this road that was being built in the Amazon for COP. Even me, I was feeling like bad because of coming here because of that. And then, they use images, they make it perfectly for you to believe that this is true. And when you start, looking a little bit and digging a little bit, which, I mean, it's a work and it's time that maybe you don't have. That's why there's like people already doing that, like Maldita, like different, like, organizations working on those. And I think they do an amazing work. But yeah, like then you see that, okay, actually this road was built since apparently like 1 year ago, no, 3 years ago. It was not even for COP, but they use this, as a thing to, blame on the climate community, so much hypocrisy and so on. So I think it's very important, like to dedicate a little bit of your time, or at least to, as I said, to follow Maldita, like this type of organizations that they do that work for you, so you don't have to do it yourself. Of course, as you said, check sources. That's very important. Like check what is the source, because many sources are actually blogs, are actually random opinions, and I always recommend to check like verified sources, like from governments, from when the Dana was happening, from IMED, not from this guy from TikTok. It's just, very basic stuff. I think education plays a big part on this, like having panels like this, especially for youth, that they are all the time on social media, making them understand you need to develop critical thinking. Like critical thinking is the most essential tool that we have and that we are losing, especially youth, because of social media, And it's very interesting because I was part of this campaign that it was called UN Climate Verified, that happened in different parts of the world. And we were given this task. It was a campaign, by the way, between TikTok and UN. And basically, it was regarding a new tool that TikTok developed for denounce or report misinformation. So still, until today, you have that button in TikTok where you push report. There is one that is called harmful misinformation. And then it gives you a different options. And one of them says, climate change misinformation that contradicts well-established scientific consensus, such as climate denial. And I think buttons like that, whether they work or not, because then algorithm is like that, and we had some issues during the campaign because we were reporting certain videos with that option, and they were not disappeared because they were saying, no, this really doesn't go against that, so it's tricky, but at least exists. And I think that tools should be, available in Instagram as well, especially in Twitter, in different platforms, so people can denounce specifically what it is, because it's as it states, it's something that is harmful, right? And then, just to finish, the most simple thing: if you are not sure, just don't share it. That's all.
Thank you. I think now we have time to hear a bit more from you, from the IODAT. What kind of question, what kind of comments can you make? We really want to engage. We have one question here. Let me go get the mic.
Yeah, thank you. That was super interesting. So I was wondering if it seems to me that there's two kinds of people who are kind of in the way of the ecological transition. There's people who are like kind of indifferent to climate change, right? So like you've tackled a lot of how to engage people who are indifferent with like stories and giving them more information and fighting misinformation that they might have. However, I've also found that there's a lot of people who are actively hostile towards it. So not only indifferent, but also think that there's like something wrong with climate activists, right? I used to think that this was something that was unique to the United States, and see it along the Trump movement. But as the far right is increasingly more powerful across the world, in Europe and especially in Spain, I've started to see it like everywhere as well. So usually you will, and it doesn't seem to me that they have the wrong data. It seems to me that they have just a different way of reading the data that makes it more hostile to you, and it makes it really hard to engage with them. So for example, I don't know, I have a lot of friends from growing up who've like turned to the far right, and when I try to engage with them about climate change, they think I'm like some like EU bureaucrat, like that I'm too stuck up for them or something. So I was wondering if you have any tips of how to engage with that kind of person as well, because for the ecological transition to work in a democratic way, we need to engage everybody and bring everyone along. So I was just wondering if you have any tips of how to do that sort of engagement with people who are just hostile.
Sorry, we are short on mics. Can you hear me? Yeah. Sorry. So maybe we will take more questions and comments and answer to everything at once. I don't know if anyone else has questions, comments, ideas, experience they want to share. And if not, we can already answer to this question. Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with what you said. That's something that I see every day, and that I also like try to work, because I don't want to be just talking to my bubble, my echo chamber. So that is the thing. And I was talking the other day with someone that gave me an idea that normally I don't use, but I think I should use more. You need to. It's like you are selling something. Like you need to engage people on the way that tackles their interests. And for example, with the right, they're very worried, at least in Spain, with immigrants. So when maybe the conversation that we need to have with these people being displaced and coming to their territory, and that's not something that I would like to use, but maybe you need to understand their perspective, how they are thinking, and talk about something that they really care about, because they are not going to care about, they are not going to feel moved because of what is happening, in another territories, because maybe, we are not the same. We don't have the same empathy, I do care. There's people that they don't care. They just care about the perimetry that surrounds them, and that's all. So if they're, I really think the strategy there is listening first, seeing what they really care about, and in a general way of seeing what they care about, I think it lays a lot towards security, immigration, and all these topics, at least the right. So I think that's what we should tackle, And it's also about breaking the agenda. The problem with the climate crisis is that it seems, or ecological stuff, it seems an agenda that is just like for people on the left, right? Like climate disasters, apparently they just affect people on the left, we are very particular. Like they breathe another oxygen for some type of reason. So I think it's very important to engage them on that way, understanding that it affects economy as well, it affects their lands, their crops, their security, and be more simple with the way we convey the things. The left normally is very nuanced because the climate crisis is nuanced. It's not that simple. And for them, they just want to hear simple things. You know, there's a lot of people that they don't have education on these things. They don't have education even why it's important a tree. You know what I mean? So we really need to engage them in a very different way and talking the same language than them, even if it's not something that you normally would do, you know? So it's all about a strategy, I would say.
May I add something?
Please.
I completely agree. And I want to bring an anecdote. I'm friends with Carmen from Climabar. Maybe Spanish speaking know Climabar is a very, very good Instagram account to follow. They bring like this climate crisis into a very simple and funny language, which makes people engage. And she told this in a video, but she also told me personally. Once she was in a BlaBlaCar. A BlaBlaCar is an app in Spain where you just take car sharing for travels, for trips. And like people were, when you get into a BlaBlaCar, you start like, well, you have to make conversation because it may be some hours in the trip. And of course, like when it was her turn, she was, well, I work in climate communication. And there was a person in the car like, I don't believe in climate change. So Carmen was like, okay, this trip is going to be long. But she did something that was listening. And at the end of the trip, there weren't so many things that they didn't agree on. I think we need to start listening again and stop being so defensive, even if, of course, it touches the core of what we believe and, of course, the facts that we have, right? Because this is not an opinion. But still, I think it's interesting that we have to start engaging again in conversations, even if we don't agree. I have the same situation in many groups of friends, and it's not easy, but I think at least listening and talking and understanding why the person has this way of thinking and where it comes from and where is the fear and what this person cares of, because it's not like they don't care. They care for different things. And sometimes understanding this is the challenge. I also think that the pandemic had a huge impact in the mental health of a lot of people, and many of conspiracy theories and many of stuff that is going around started a little bit or increased from the pandemic on. So yes, it's understanding the context, but I also think it's the challenge we all have. So thanks for sharing your experience, because I think we are all building together how to talk to these people, but at least listening can be a good advice.
Thank you. Do you have any more questions, or maybe Fermin, do you want to add something on the topic?
It's just fully agreeing with Guadalupe. So I think part of the problem is that we are all living in these echo chambers, using Naomi Klein's terminology. I think we are not speaking with each other, and this is kind of a growing phenomenon that explains not just climate but our daily lives. And we all only engage with smaller groups of people that think like us, do all the things that we do. And that's the root of the problem. We got to engage much more, and it's difficult. And I fully agree. I think the pandemic worsened all of this. We are much more enclosed now, and we got the only way of tackling with this is breaking the silos. I mean, that's probably one of the reasons why we see the extreme right popping up around the world. But yeah, just closing with that.
Thank you. If there's no other question, I was going to end this session with a round of practical tips to make climate action more easy, easier to access and easier to understand and easier to share. But you already said so many concrete and practical things that I don't have any more questions to ask. So I think we have these three concrete things that are checking sources, checking data, and reporting when we have to. We have on listening to each other, trying to really break the silo and creating conversation. And last but not least, we have to start talking another language. We have to start trying to break from this expert side and be more natural and be more humane. So thank you so much. Thank you for being there, and we can have an informal chat right now. So thank you. Have a nice day.